Strait of Hormuz is now down. And the US has just done the most brutal of things to seal up the Gulf. 2 aircraft carriers, dozens of warships, thousands of Marines, and a message which Iran never imagined. Chapter 1. The Red Button. The US is now gearing up to deploy the red button in the second and possibly the most catastrophic wave of its blockading operation in the Strait of Hormuz. As a reaction to this tactic of bargaining by Iran that is using this narrow waterway, the Washington administration is throwing the biggest maritime trump card to the table. The region will have 2 huge aircraft carriers. Hormuz is directly locked to dozens of warships. Minesweepers, unmanned underwater vehicles, Navy SEALs, and tens of thousands of Marines are currently preparing their last arrangements. The USS George H.W. Bush aircraft carrier, which has just left Norfolk, with what is virtually the air force of a small nation on the flight deck, spearheads this enormous force. Swinging already round the African continent and beyond the Strait of Gibraltar, this gigantic floating fortress has set its path squarely and savagely upon Hormuz. More than 70 F-18 Super Hornet fighter jets, dozens of Growler electronic warfare planes, Hawkeye early warning systems, Seahawk helicopters, and almost 5,000 men and women with what is virtually their own army. The ship will be supporting the USS Abraham Lincoln in the eastern side of Strait of Hormuz, which is about 200 kilometers south of the Iranian coastline. Chapter 2. A steel wall in the water. The US Navy has not limited itself to these aircraft carriers alone that are anchored in the Arabian Sea. The region is already on high alert with more than 15 highly advanced warships in the region. A huge shield of Arleigh Burke-class guided missile destroyers, Ticonderoga-class cruisers, amphibious assault ships, and naval replenishment platforms will soon sink into the warm waters of Hormuz. The guided missile destroyers are sweeping the dark waters with their radars aimed at the Iranian shores. The amphibious assault vessels with full-grown Marines in their belly are virtually on standby and awaiting that single command to be issued. And one should not overlook the almost 3,500 soldiers of the 31st Marine Expeditionary Unit, which is supported by MV-22 Ospreys who are keeping fingers on the trigger in the Arabian Sea, and an 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit of approximately 2,500 troops is also on its way to the Middle East. To this tremendous military power, the US Navy and Air Force are tightening the lock they already have on the Hormuz. Chapter 3. Sweeping out the unseen menace. US minesweepers, which departed the Pacific to counter the silent menace of the waters, i.e. the lethal naval mines of Iran, are also sneaking into the region. These ships are leaving bases in Japan and are heading west to the Middle East by the Strait of Malacca, without reducing their speed. Massive cleanup is being done in Hormuz by weaving nets to clean up the shallow waters. P-8 Poseidon maritime patrol planes are constantly patrolling the waters and listening to their AI-assisted sonars to raise the alarm in case of the smallest anomaly in the depths of the water. There is a lot more than a military display of force to this massive naval buildup. This is the most vivid visual evidence that now the blockade policy of Washington towards Iran has entered a whole new, much more aggressive stage. The image that is forming around Hormuz is now rather clear. America's "We Are Coming" message is spreading across the entire region along with the warm winds of the Gulf. 3 armies of massively moving steel crossing 3 different oceans, and simultaneously, all at the same time, all to the same goal. Not only a deterrent, the calculus in Hormuz is going to change radically. Chapter 4. The first casualties of the blockade. In reality, the effects of this enormous force being thrown into the field and the blockade that has been enforced in Hormuz are already being experienced in all their unclothed truth. The most recent field reports indicate that precisely 10 commercial ships were in the path of the blockade, were forced out of their routes, and were bounced back like they hit a steel wall and were bound to sail back to Iranian ports. The USS Spruance, an Arleigh Burke-class destroyer, intercepted even 2 Iranian crude oil tankers trying to leave Chabahar port. After this tense event, the USS Spruance radioed both the Iranian ships and instructed them to go back to port. This is the US Navy. the US has declared a formal blockade of ports and coastal waters of Iran. This is an illegal measure. All merchantmen are hereby advised to go back to port should you leave, and to stop transit to Iran should that be your next order. This was the first hard and tangible reaction of what seems to be the second wave operation of Washington. During the initial 24 hours of the operation, when more than 10,000 US troops as well as dozens of naval vessels virtually surrounded the strait, there were literally no ships that could pass through it. But there is one very important point here which shows how callous the operation was. This lockdown does not apply to the ships coming in and out of Iranian ports through Hormuz. Commercial traffic that is neutral to non-Iranian ports is not touched at all. The US is not halting trade in the region, it is only and directly trying to eradicate the risk factors at sea. Chapter 5. Asymmetric response by Iran. Well, with the mightiest navy in the world on the doorstep of the strait, is Iran waiting? The past 48 hours have seen the military action on the Iran side of the strait visibly increase. The Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps Navy is attempting to deploy the asymmetric warfare doctrine it has decades been training to deal with this very situation. Iran's strategy to regain control of Hormuz is ruthlessly simple: to continuously harass the massive US ships with a large number of small, fast, and cheap assets, exponentially increase the cost of the operation, and escalate the tension in the international community a little more each day. That is why hundreds of speedboats are cruising in the Iranian coasts of the strait, particularly during these days. Armed boats with machine guns and rocket launchers of the Baghama class are tracking US destroyers at 40 to 50 knots. The Ashura and Tanda class of attack boats are instead designed to be used in swarm attacks. They are miniature, nimble, mass-produced, and programmed to conduct coordinated attacks on a large scale. According to global intelligence reports, there are estimates between 600 and 800 Iranian speedboats in the Hormuz. You remember we left off on April 11th with the USS Frank E. Peterson Jr. and USS Michael Murphy in the Strait, and the naval units of the Revolutionary Guards had tried to swarm the two destroyers in a few minutes. Sharp and threatening final warning announcements blared over the radios. Nevertheless, the US side stuck to the path, saying that they acted within the framework of international law and rules of engagement. Chapter 6. The drone threat overhead. The possibility of Iran employing speedboats and small crafts is not all of the risk that they are planning against the US in Hormuz. The Tehran regime is also ruthlessly attempting to stock the skies over the strait with the drones they have as well. It is said that today there are more than 200 active surveillance and attack drones in the area, which include Shahed 136 kamikaze models, Mohajer 6 and Mohajer 10 long-range surveillance drones, and small FPV suicide drones. Here it becomes clear that Iran is developing a threatening strategy based on its UAV arsenal to reclaim Hormuz. These Iranian drones putting the strait at risk do not solely conduct surveillance. They also have coordinated swarm attack abilities and could be employed as a tool of war of attrition to drain American costly missiles of defense. This is possibly the biggest risk that may be encountered by the possible second US operation in Hormuz. Washington has, however, learned how to cope with such hindering drones in the area. On April 11th, when tensions were at their highest point, the US forces were said to have shot down an Iranian surveillance drone. However, the risk of a drone swarm becomes an aspect that needs to be taken into account at all stages of this operation. Chapter 7. The secret peril below the wave. Under the waters of Hormuz, the picture is much darker. Reuters sources have claimed that the Revolutionary Guards have planted dozens of mines in the strait. There are almost 6,000 naval mines that are being discussed. These are not just normal explosives. Mahan 3 type mines are those that are suspended in the water when at rest. These risk factors are activated as soon as they receive the acoustic or magnetic signal of an approaching ship. The Mahan 7, however, is based on the ocean floor and blows up under ships sailed over the boundaries. Contact mines planted on the ground blow themselves up. And perhaps the most dangerous ones are the drifting mines. According to New York Times sources, a good part of these mines has been swept by the strong currents of the bottom of the Gulf and moved kilometers away from where they were initially located. Iranian media, in its turn, is getting more and more strident by the day, gaining strength thanks to these asymmetric threat assets that the Tehran regime has developed in the Strait of Hormuz. The words that say we will make the strongest retaliation against any foreign naval vessel come one after the other. Fire has not been opened yet, but the air in the strait is a powder keg, which requires only the spark of a match to blow up. Chapter 8. The costly mine clearing business. On this backdrop of tension, the U.S. mine clearance operation is ongoing. The autonomous underwater drone of Knife-Fish class is identifying the mines with the help of sonar scanning. Mark 18 Mod 2 Kingfish unmanned underwater vehicles are finding the buried explosives by surveying the ocean floor with their torpedo-shaped bodies. Also, MH-60S Seahawk helicopters are conducting airborne laser mine detectors to search near-surface mines. In the case of detection of a mine, Seafox expendable neutralizers are involved. This miniature fiber optic remotely controlled robot can swim straight to the mine and blow itself and the threat up with a shaped charge. The cost of each Seafox is approximately $100,000. In its place, the mine that it neutralizes can have cost only $2,000. This type of operation is very risky as far as costs are concerned. These loopholes may even embolden Iran to come up with a faulty and risky game plan against the US in Hormuz. Chapter 9. The narrowest point, a 33-kilometer killing field. The narrowest point of the strait is only 33 kilometers. It is a range that a speedboat can travel in 20 minutes, a cruise missile in minutes, and a ballistic missile can travel in a few seconds. The initial potential outcome is the further deterioration of the already known low-intensity conflict. A speedboat or spy drone of Iran might approach U.S. destroyers within the critical distance. This could be the moment that calls the U.S. to finally press the button to make its final move. It is predictable in such a possible clash area that the president would probably neither issue warning shots, but instead issue the direct order to destroy the threat. After such a command is issued, naval and air force forces might be able to launch a devastating strike in concert. The takeoff of F-18 Super Hornets and EA-18G Growler electronic warfare planes off the USS Abraham Lincoln would increase both the amount of air patrols in the strait. The electronic warfare capabilities of the Growlers would probably come into play to locate the threat itself in its layer and designate the target. These planes can disrupt the coordination of the speedboats by disrupting the communications frequency used by Iran. P-8 Poseidon Sea Patrol airplanes, in the meantime, will be able to provide aerial surveillance constantly on all Iranian ships, all drone flights, and the location of all coastal batteries in real time. The last strike will probably be the annihilation of the found Iranian threat component in Hormuz. Chapter 10. Drone Swarm Nightmare. The latter situation indicates a far more dire scenario. The potential of drone swarm Iran possesses can be invoked. As a wave of simultaneous coordinated attack, Iran could organize over 100 speedboats and a wave of drones. The ruthless logic behind this is to overload the ability of billion-dollar defense systems with a huge number of cheap devices. Whereas each Aegis interceptor missile is worth hundreds of thousands of dollars, a kamikaze drone is an instrument worth a few thousand, and a speedboat tens of thousands of dollars. In this case, however, the US may take one of the most specialized weapons of the arsenal on the stage. We will refer to those old-time mighty planes which we can find at almost every phase of the action, that is, the A-10 Warthogs. Such targets were designed into these aircraft. They have the capability to shred speedboat fleets with their 30mm GAU-8 Avenger rotary cannons which shoot up thousands of rounds per minute. A-10 aircraft are slow and noisy, yet they are the best platform in the world when it comes to blowing hundreds of small boats up. Whilst Super Hornets would offer close air support, the A-10 aircraft would be able to strike the boats, coastal drone launch ramps, and entrenched positions directly. Instead, B-52 and B-1 strategic bombers would be able to attack the missile batteries and command centers farther inland. Chapter 11. Iran's anti-ship missiles. Iran might respond to this wave of attacks by launching salvos of anti-ship missiles by the coastal batteries in Bandar Abbas, Qeshm Island, and Hormuz Island. They have such lethal tools as the Noor, a C-802 derivation of the Chinese subsonic cruise missile of Chinese origin with a range of 120 to 170 kilometers. U.S. forces, nevertheless, have deterrent air defense capabilities in the area that can shoot down such missiles, such as the Aegis Combat System, the Patriot P-AC-3 MSE battery, THAAD, and NASAMS. But there is also the Iranian side that is seeking to use the stockpiles of these missiles to run out the missiles by attrition. Due to this reason, the Iranian missile arsenal has always been a prominent issue of concern in terms of the possibility of a second phase operation. Another hazardous thing is where these missiles are concealed. Large majority of them are truck-mounted and can move quickly around. Iranian coast with its mountainous terrain literally provides natural fortifications to hide these batteries. Considering the narrowness of the strait, a 300-kilometer range seems more than enough for Iran to launch these ruthless potential attack waves. Chapter 12. The ground operation alternative. However, what would happen should the U.S. seek to employ this newfound naval and air power it has built in the Middle East towards an entirely different strategy before the second wave of operation? The ground operation signals of President Donald Trump could reappear. The USS America and the ships which support it have around 2,000 to 3,000 elite Marines, MV-22 Osprey tilt rotors, and MH-60 Seahawk helicopters in the area. This is where the special military groups could intervene with these powerful deterrent forces at this possible point of the operation. These special U.S. forces can be deployed onto any coastal targets within hours. A limited coastal operation possibility might not be ruled out in case the missile ramps or command centers on the Iranian shores persistently endanger the U.S. ships. Whether or not one side makes a miscalculation may be the only thing that will tell whether either of these scenarios will come to pass. Chapter 13. The real target, the energy lifeline of China. When you put all these pieces together, the picture that you get is clear. Washington does not just want to open the Strait of Hormuz, it desires to subject it to total domination. And the eventual end of this control could be to cut off the remaining economic lifeline of Iran. Karg Island, where 90% of the oil in the country is exported, may be one of these routes. Here, the most impressive aspect of the story starts. Since the U.S. fully halting this energy supply may directly strike not only Tehran, but also Beijing thousands of kilometers away. Prior to the war, over 90% of the Iranian oil was exported to China via Karg Island. This stream was the biggest contributor of fund to the war machine of Iran. Each time a tanker left Karg, millions of dollars made their way into the military budget of Iran. Each barrel funded the cost of production of the drones, speedboats, missiles, and mines that were deployed to the front. Washington is very aware of this. And it is on this very account that the naval surge is much more than a naval blockade. The new naval and air force units the U.S. has deployed to the area and the current blockade procedure in Hormuz are virtually surrounding Iran and China. In short, the fundamental dynamics in the Middle East are now about to change. The next trump card that America could play in the crisis line is the asymmetric threats in the hands of Iran and in the backstage, the energy crisis that China has. It is not yet clear what type of picture all this will give us in the future. The Strait of Hormuz has now completely fallen under the control of Iran. The U.S. has also deployed a ferocious armada in a large show of sheer strength to destroy the hold of the Irk on the Gulf forever. It is no longer whether Iran can resist. Whether they will attempt is the question. What is your opinion about this question? We look forward to your comments.